blood-soaked mask wailed again, its mournful cry piercing the stillness of the dawn. The sound echoed through the village, a harrowing wail that made the air itself feel thick with fear. The villagers gathered around, their faces pale with dread, eyes fixed on the ancient relic that had haunted their lives for generations. The mask, carved from the sacred wood of a forgotten tree, had wept blood every morning for as long as the elders could remember. But today, the blood flowed faster, darker, as though the mask itself was alive, yearning for something unknown. Abeni, the village healer, stood among them, her hands gripping the edge of the wooden platform. She felt the mask's call. An eerie pull that made her chest tighten. She had always dismissed the stories. Old wives' tales they were, she thought. The mask had been passed down through the ages, and the villagers had grown accustomed to its cries. But today felt different. There was something unsettling in the air, something she couldn't explain. As the villagers chanted prayers under their breath, Abeni stepped forward. Her fingers brushed the mask, and for a brief moment, the world around her seemed to fade. Her heart pounded as a strange warmth spread from the mask to her palms, a sensation she had never felt before. It was as if the mask itself was alive, breathing in sync with her. She hesitated, her mind battling between skepticism and an inexplicable urge to understand. "Return it to the mountain." Elder Obi's voice cut through the tension like a blade. His gaze was sharp, filled with a mix of fear and urgency. "It's the only way to stop the blood. We must return it to where it was found, where it belongs." The words hung heavy in the air, but Abeni could feel the weight of the mask's presence in her hands. She had heard the tales, of course, of the betrayal that had bound the village to the curse, of the blood that flowed, to remind them of the sins long past. But what if the mask held more than just a curse? What if it was a key to understanding something deeper, something that could change everything? "The elders speak of the past," she said aloud, her voice steady but filled with doubt. "But what if the past isn't the only thing we should fear? What if there's more we don't understand?" Elder Obi's face tightened, his age showing in the furrows of his brow. "The past is the foundation of our present. You must trust in what we know. The mask was created by our ancestors. It must be returned." But Abeni couldn't shake the feeling that something in the mask was calling her, urging her to dig deeper. As the blood continued to flow, she felt the eyes of the villagers upon her, waiting for a decision. That night, as the moon rose high in the sky, Abeni lay in her hut, restless. Her sleep was fitful, haunted by strange dreams. She saw images of the mask, but they were different, darker, more ancient. A shadowy figure loomed in her dreams, a figure she couldn't place, whispering in a language she didn't understand. The figure's voice was soft, almost pleading, but there was something menacing about it, a warning she couldn't quite grasp. She woke with a start, her breath coming in quick gasps. The mask. It was more than just an object. It was a key. But to what? Abeni sat up, her heart racing. The dreams had been too vivid, too real. The mask had whispered to her in her sleep, and now she couldn't ignore it any longer. The blood, the curse. It all felt too real to be dismissed. She had to make a choice. The village was on edge, and she could feel the pressure mounting. The elders, especially Obi, demanded that the mask be returned to the mountain, but Abeni's growing connection to it made her question everything. Could it be that the mask held the answers to breaking the curse? Or was it truly a symbol of the past's unbreakable grip on their lives? Abeni stood at the threshold of her decision. If she returned the mask, she would honor the village's traditions. But would it be enough to end the suffering? Or would it be the same as every other morning? Another day of blood, Another day of fear. The mask's cry echoed in her ears, pulling her forward. Abeni could feel it now, deep in her bones. It wasn't just blood. It was a warning. And if she ignored it, the village might never be free. Her hands trembled as she gripped the mask once more. What was it that called her so strongly? Was it destiny? Or was it simply the weight of the curse that demanded her obedience? The air seemed to thicken as she made her decision. She would not let fear dictate her actions. She would uncover the truth of the mask, whatever it took. And so, with the mask in her hands, Abeni prepared to face the unknown. Abeni watched the mask tremble in her hands, its blood still fresh from the morning's cry. The villagers gathered around, their eyes wide with fear, their bodies tense. The mask had always been a symbol of power, a reminder of the ancient betrayal that had cursed their land. But now, with her father's health fading and the weight of the village's expectations pressing down on her, Abeni could feel the true burden of that curse. Her father, the village elder, lay on his deathbed. His life slipping away with each passing moment. The elders had made their peace with the traditions that bound them to the past. But Abeni was different. She had always questioned the old ways, the rituals, the sacrifices. She had learned the arts of healing, not for reverence of tradition, but for the chance to break free, to find a new path for herself. But now, as her father's life waned, that path seemed farther and farther out of reach. The blood from the mask was still wet on her hands, a reminder of the curse that had followed the village for generations. The elders spoke of the betrayal, the dark actions of their ancestors that had left their people cursed, forever marked by the mask's cries. Every morning it wept blood, a constant reminder of the betrayal, a mark of their shame. But for Abeni, the mask was more than just a symbol. It was a force, and the question gnawed at her. Was it a curse, or could it be the key to their salvation? She heard the voice of Elder Obi, his voice harsh with authority. The mask must be returned. It belongs to the mountain. It must be placed where it was, found where it belongs. But Abeni's hands tightened around the mask. Something in its form, in the way it called to her, kept her from listening. She had always followed the village's ways, but now she wondered if it was time to create her own path. The mask's power was undeniable. But could she really trust it? Or was it just another reminder of a past that should remain buried? As the village prepared for yet another ritual, Abeni sat alone, the mask resting on her lap. Her mind raced, her heart conflicted. She had always believed the mask to be a symbol of the past, of things that could not be changed. But now, it felt different. Holding it, she could see shadows of something deeper, something tied to her own bloodline. She had always heard the stories of a powerful ancestor, a figure whose betrayal had started it all. But now, as she closed her eyes and let the mask's presence seep into her mind, she saw visions of that ancestor, Oluwaseun. His eyes dark with secrets, his actions tied to the curse in ways she could not yet understand. The vision intensified, and Abeni was overcome with a sense of recognition, a connection that went beyond blood. It was as if Oluwaseun was speaking directly to her, warning her of the danger she faced. Was this a curse? Or was the mask a key to understanding the past, to breaking free from the chains of guilt and vengeance? As the sun set, Abeni found herself in the village's sacred clearing, the mask in her hands. The elders had gathered, their voices low in prayer, preparing for the next ritual. She could feel their eyes on her, watching, waiting for her to take the mask and return it to the mountain as tradition demanded. But she hesitated. The mask's blood still clung to her hands, a reminder of the decision that lay before her. Abeni took a deep breath, the weight of the mask's power and the Village's expectations pressing against her. The mask cried blood every morning, but it also held something more, something she could not ignore. The mask might be the key to breaking the curse, but it also held the potential to destroy everything. Could she risk her own beliefs, her future, for the sake of tradition? Could she follow in the footsteps of the elders and maintain the village's way of life? Or could she create something new, something that would free them all? The villagers looked to her with hope and fear. She felt the pull of the mask again, its power overwhelming. She could no longer deny it. She had to find the truth of the mask, even if it meant defying everything she had ever known. That night, alone in her hut, Abeni uncovered an ancient scroll hidden deep within her father's belongings. The text, written in an old language, spoke of a ritual, a dangerous one, that could destroy the mask and end the curse. But the price was steep. It required a sacrifice of life, a choice between saving the village and saving oneself. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on her chest. Could she make the ultimate sacrifice for the good of the village? Or was the mask something more than just a symbol of vengeance and blood? Could it hold the key to their redemption, or would it destroy everything? The dawn was coming, and with it, another cry from the mask. But this time, Abeni was ready to make her choice. Abeni sifted through the scattered belongings of her father, each item a heavy reminder of his declining health. As her fingers brushed over old leather and brittle paper, her eyes caught a glimpse of something unfamiliar. A journal, worn with age, yet still intact. She flipped it open, the pages revealing a cryptic scrawl, her father's handwriting. The words hinted at something deeper, something hidden within the very fabric of the village's legacy. The mask, the blood, the curse. Abeni's heart raced as she read further, the journal revealing secrets she had never been told. Her father's belief in tradition had always been absolute. But now, this journal questioned everything. The curse of the mask, the blood that flowed every morning, was not an act of vengeance from their ancestors, but a twisted legacy of betrayal. The journal hinted that there was a way to end it, but the path to the truth was dangerous. Uncharted, she closed the journal, her mind heavy with the weight of her discovery. Was it true? Could the mask be broken? Or had they all been doomed to follow the same cycle of bloodshed forever? Days passed, and Abeni could feel the pressure mounting. The village needed answers, and so did she. Driven by the journal's words, she set out to find the one person who might hold the key. Tunde, the mysterious wanderer who had appeared on the outskirts of the village several times before. Tunde stood on the edge of the village, his dark eyes scanning the horizon. When Abeni approached, he met her gaze with an unreadable expression. "The mask," she began, her voice steady. "I need to know more. The truth." Tunde looked at her for a long moment, his face hard before he spoke. "You seek knowledge that could destroy you." Abeni's pulse quickened. "I have no choice. Tell me what you know." Tunde hesitated, then nodded. "The mask has cursed your people for generations, yes. But there is a ritual, one that can destroy it, one that can end the blood. But it comes at a cost, a price too steep for many to pay. Tell me." Abeni's voice was firm, her hands clenched into fists. "I will pay it, whatever it is." Tunde's gaze softened for a brief moment, but it quickly turned cold again. "The ritual requires the ultimate sacrifice. A life, one of great worth. The mask will demand it, and only then will the curse be lifted." Abeni recoiled. "A life? Whose life?" "The one who chooses to end it," Tunde said quietly. "It must be their life, their blood, for the curse to be broken. Abeni's mind spun. The idea of sacrificing herself, of giving up everything, for the sake of the village, was unimaginable. But the thought of living another day under the mask's curse was unbearable. Her father's words echoed in her mind, the village's traditions, its culture, its very foundation. If she performed the ritual, if she chose to end it, would it destroy everything? Could the village survive without its past, without the mask that had bound them for so long? Tunde's voice broke through her thoughts. You must decide, Abeni. The village's future is not just in your hands. It is tied to your choice. As the days passed, Abeni wrestled with the enormity of her decision. The more she thought about the mask, the more she questioned everything she had ever known. The village's traditions, the elders, the rituals. They all seemed to lead back to this one moment. The curse had been passed down. But was it her responsibility to end it? And if so, what would that mean for the future of the village? Could they survive without the weight of the mask? Or would breaking the curse destroy their sense of identity, their very way of life? Tunde's presence was constant, his words lingering in her thoughts. He spoke little, but his actions spoke volumes. There was something hidden in his past, a darkness that he never fully revealed. Abeni couldn't trust him completely, but she couldn't ignore him either. His knowledge was crucial, and yet she felt a gnawing suspicion that he had his own motives. One night, after a tense exchange, Abeni could no longer resist the pull of the truth. She approached Tunde, her heart heavy with doubt. You've been following the mask's path for years, she said. Why? Tunde's eyes flashed with something dark. I have my reasons, he replied, his voice low. But you should know this, Abeni. The blood you seek to end. It is not just the blood of your ancestors. It runs through you. Abeni froze. What do you mean? Tunde took a deep breath. You are the descendant of Oluwaseun, the ancestor, whose betrayal started it all. The curse is tied to your bloodline. Only you can end it, but at a price. Abeni's chest tightened. The realization hit her like a storm. She was connected to the very betrayal that had cursed the village. Her blood was part of the curse, and now she had to make the impossible choice as she faced the mirror of her own past. She understood. The curse was not just something that had happened long ago. It was something that lived within her, that connected her to the village in ways she couldn't yet fully grasp. The choices she made now would shape not only her future, but the future of the entire village. The truth was no longer just a matter of breaking the curse. It was about confronting the dark past that had always shaped them. The blood that poured from the mask darkened, thickening with every passing moment. It was no longer just an eerie sign of their doomed fate. It had become an omen. The villagers, already on edge, gathered once again, their faces pale with fear. The mask's cries echoed through the air, filling every ear with dread. It was louder, angrier. The curse was not just continuing, it was escalating. Abeni stood at the center of the gathered crowd, the mask heavy in her hands. She could feel the power surging from it, and the growing pressure in the air. The curse had grown stronger, more insistent, as though it was demanding an answer, a resolution. Time was running out. The village was teetering on the brink of destruction, and Abeni knew she had to make a choice. The elders had warned her that the curse could never be broken unless a sacrifice was made. They had spoken of it in hushed tones, in whispers that echoed through the history of their village. Abeni had never believed in such old superstitions. But now, as the mask cried blood and the village trembled in fear, the weight of tradition pressed heavily on her heart. She had to act. Abeni took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the mask's power coursing through her. "The ritual must be performed," she declared, her voice shaking with resolve. "It is the only way to save the village." She didn't hesitate. With a determined step, she walked toward the sacred mountain, the mask held tightly in her hands. Behind her, Tunde and the villagers followed, their eyes fixed on her with a mixture of hope and fear. The mountain was where the ritual would take place, where the curse had first taken root. Abeni knew what she had to do, and though her heart ached at the thought, she was willing to sacrifice herself for the sake of her people. At the peak, the ritual began. The mask cried blood once more, the familiar, terrifying sound reverberating through the air. The villagers gathered around, their voices rising in unison, chanting prayers to appease the gods. But as Abeni stepped forward, ready to perform the final act, something stopped her. A shadow fell over the group. A chill ran through the air, and suddenly, the spirit of Oluwaseun, the ancestor whose betrayal had caused the curse, appeared before her. His form was ghostly, fading in and out of the mist that surrounded them. "Stop," the spirit whispered, his voice soft but commanding. "Do not complete this ritual." Abeni froze, her hands still clutching the mask. "Why?" she asked, her voice breaking. "The village is doomed. I must end this. I must save them." Oluwaseun's spirit looked at her with sad eyes, his voice filled with regret. "Your sacrifice is not the answer. The curse is not something that can be undone with blood. It was never meant to be." Confusion washed over Abeni. "What do you mean?" "The curse was born from betrayal, but it is also bound by a choice," the spirit explained. "The truth is, you must forgive the betrayal of your ancestor. Only then will the curse end. Only then will your village be free." Abeni felt a deep tremor within her. Forgiveness? How could she forgive the very betrayal that had cursed her people, that had shackled them for generations? The thought seemed impossible. But as the spirit's words lingered in the air, she realized that the path of vengeance had only led them deeper into darkness. Her heart ached as she stood there, caught between two impossible choices. Would she sacrifice herself, breaking the cycle but leaving the village forever scarred? Or would she forgive, breaking free from the vengeance that had held them all prisoner? As the weight of the decision pressed down on her, Abeni felt a stirring in her chest. She could feel the mask's power tugging at her, urging her to act. But then, just as she reached for the mask to perform the ritual, Tunde stepped forward. "You don't understand," Tunde said sharply, his eyes dark with something Abeni couldn't place. "I've been following the mask's blood-soaked path for years. It's not just your ancestor's betrayal that binds you to this curse. It's me." Abeni's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean?" Tunde took a step closer, his voice low and filled with hidden anger. "I am the descendant of the very man who cursed your people. I've been using you, manipulating you all along. This mask, this curse, it's all part of the game. You've been a pawn in my hands." The world around Abeni seemed to fall away. Her mind reeled. Tunde, the one person she had trusted, had been deceiving her all along. "You knew?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "You knew everything?" Tunde's eyes hardened. "I've been seeking the power that comes with the mask, but I needed you to end it for me, so I could take control." Abeni felt her heart shatter. The man she had trusted, the man who had shared her struggle, had betrayed her in the worst possible way. But then, in that moment of heartbreak, the true revelation hit her. The mask had never been a curse. It was a warning, a symbol of the consequences of seeking vengeance. The blood that had been shed each morning had not been a punishment. It was a call to let go of the past, to choose a different path. Tunda had been seeking power, but the mask had shown her the truth. The only way to break the curse, to free the village, was to stop seeking revenge, to forgive. Abeni turned her gaze to the spirit of Oluwashun, who now stood silent, his eyes filled with approval. The mask's blood ceased to flow, and the curse lifted, not through sacrifice, but through the power of forgiveness. And in that moment, Abeni understood. The mask had never been the source of their pain. It had been the symbol of the choices they made. It had been a warning, not a curse. With the mask in her hands, Abeni faced the future, not as a healer bound by tradition, but as a leader who had learned that true strength came from breaking free of vengeance, from choosing the path of peace. The curse was broken, but the village had changed forever. The mask's blood no longer flowed, and the air seemed lighter, but something was missing. The elders, once powerful figures, now stood in silence, their words no longer commanding the same respect. They had led the village for generations, but now their power faded in the face of a new reality. The villagers whispered amongst themselves, unsure of what the future held. The old ways, the traditions that had bound them for centuries, were no longer enough to guide them through the storm that had just passed. Abeni stood at the center of the village, the weight of leadership heavy on her shoulders. She had broken the curse, but in doing so, she had shattered the foundation of everything the village had known. The villagers looked to her now, not as a healer, but as a leader. They awaited her guidance, but Abeni knew that her next steps would not be easy. Her decision to forgive the sins of the past had shaken the very core of their beliefs. The elders, the village, and even Abeni herself were forced to re-evaluate everything they had held dear. Could forgiveness truly erase the bloodshed of generations? Could they rebuild without losing the essence of their identity? Abeni knew there was no turning back. The past could not be undone, but the future was still within their grasp. With a deep breath, she stepped forward, her voice steady but filled with resolve. "The past is done," she said, her words firm. "The blood is no longer needed to remind us of who we were. We must look forward, to rebuild what has been broken, to heal what has been torn." Her voice carried across the village, and the villagers listened, their eyes wide with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. She had freed them, but the price had been steep. Now they had to learn to live without the weight of vengeance on their shoulders. As the new leader, Abeni set to work. She spent days with the elders, questioning the old ways, testing the boundaries of what had been accepted for so long. The village had followed the same rituals for generations, but now those rituals felt hollow. It was time for change. It was time to build something new. Abeni gathered the youth, the next generation, and began to teach them what she had learned. She spoke of forgiveness, of growth, of breaking free from the cycles of vengeance that had bound their people. The younger generation listened intently, eager to learn, but also wary. They had been taught to fear change, to fear the unknown. "Forgiveness is not weakness," Abeni told them, her voice filled with conviction. "It is strength. It is the strength to break free from the past, to choose a new path. We cannot build a future on the blood of the past." The youth began to embrace her words, slowly but surely. They began to understand that the power of the village lay not in the rituals of old, but in their ability to change, to evolve. They were no longer bound by the mistakes of their ancestors, and with that knowledge, they took their first steps toward a new future. As the days passed, Abeni found herself reflecting on the emotional toll of her journey. The village had changed, but so had she. The weight of her decision to forgive had not been easy to bear. She had lost much in the process. The traditions she had grown up with, the ties that had once bound her to the village's past. But she understood now that change was essential. The village could not survive if it clung to old ways that had led only to bloodshed. She mourned the loss of the past, but in doing so, she understood the importance of moving forward. The curse had been lifted, yes, but the scars remained. It was not just the village that needed healing. It was the people, their hearts, their minds. They had been bound by the weight of the curse for so long that they had forgotten how to live without it. Abeni set about healing those wounds, one day at a time. The village began to rebuild, not just in the physical sense, but emotionally and spiritually. The villagers, once bound by fear and tradition, began to embrace the possibility of a new way of life. It was not easy, and there were moments of doubt, but Abeni's leadership, her unwavering belief in the power of forgiveness, kept them moving forward. The village was reborn. It was no longer defined by the mask, by the blood, or by the curse that had haunted them for so long. It was defined by the choices they had made, by the strength they had shown in the face of their past, and by the hope they carried for the future. Abeni stood at the edge of the village, looking out over the land that had once been consumed by darkness. The sun set behind her, casting a warm glow over the horizon. The village had healed, and with it, so had she. The journey had been long, but it had brought her to this moment, where the future was no longer shrouded in fear. It was filled with possibility. The curse was broken, and the village had found a new path. And as the wind whispered through the trees, Abeni knew that this was just the beginning. The past had been conquered, but the future was still waiting to be written. The village, the people, and Abeni herself had been transformed, not by the blood of the past, but by the strength of forgiveness, growth, and the courage to change. Alone in the quiet of the night, Abeni sat, her hands still trembling from the weight of her decision. The village had changed. She had changed. And with that change came the haunting question: could the past truly be left behind? Or would it always define the future? She had seen the mask cry blood every day, felt its pull, and broken the cycle. But as the dawn crept closer, doubt lingered. Was the past something that could ever be forgotten? Could forgiveness truly erase the years of pain and loss? She stared at the mask, the blood that had once flowed so freely now dried and still. The mask, the symbol of her people's curse, had caused so much grief. Yet, as she held it in her hands now, she saw more than just the pain. The mask wasn't just a curse. It was a reminder of the choices that had bound the village to its past, choices that had kept them imprisoned by their own history. The blood was not just a sign of punishment. It was a symbol of the pain that came from holding on to the past too tightly. Abeni's thoughts drifted back to the stories she had heard as a child. Stories of betrayal and vengeance, of elders who had upheld the traditions of the village without question. She had always respected those stories, but she had never been content with them. The village had followed its traditions for generations. But what had they achieved? More pain? More bloodshed? Hadn't it been enough? It was in this moment of contemplation that she understood. The mask's blood was not just a sign of their curse. It was the legacy of pain that had been passed down, generation after generation. And that pain had to end. To break the cycle, they needed to forgive. But forgiveness was not an easy path. Forgiving the sins of the past meant letting go of everything the village had believed, everything they had held sacred. It meant releasing the hold of vengeance, a hold that had shaped the village's very foundation. But Abeni also knew that to continue down the path of vengeance would mean keeping her people chained to the past. She couldn't let the blood of her ancestors continue to rule their future. She had to choose another way. The realization hit her hard. Forgiveness. It was the key to healing the wounds that had festered for so long. It wasn't just about letting go of the past. It was about choosing to move forward with strength. Healing the old wounds meant confronting them, not running from them. And in that confrontation there was freedom. Abeni could see now that forgiveness was not weakness. It was the greatest strength. The power to forgive meant having the courage to confront the deepest pain, to release the burdens of the past, and to give the future a chance to be different. She could feel the weight of that decision, heavy and real. But it was a decision she had to make for herself, for the village, and for the generations to come. With this new understanding, Abeni stood tall. The village had been in chains for too long, bound by old grudges and old traditions. But those chains could be broken. The path ahead was unclear, but it was hers to lead. She would guide her people toward a future where vengeance no longer held sway, where forgiveness could heal the deepest wounds. As she walked toward the village, her resolve strengthened. The future wasn't bound by the mask, or the blood, or the betrayals of the past. The future was hers to shape. And in that future, forgiveness would guide them all. There would be no more chains, no more blood, only the power of a new beginning. With newfound wisdom, Abeni embraced the path ahead, leading her people into a future built not on the past's pain, but on the power of forgiveness and the hope of healing.